Back to another Impact Education Leadership. This is episode 226. I'm your host, ID34, Dr. Isaac on the third. Tonight's panelists are Buddy Thornton, Dr. Ericka Johnson, and Jerry Green. Listen, the Dr. Buddy Thornton, Positive Social Change Agent Pro. Where you been? How you been? What you been up to? Talk to the people, sir.
I've just been hibernating in my cave and writing and trying to, bite my lip in this divisive situation in this time. And, we got to do what we got to do. And sometimes we have to take a step back so that we can take 3-4 steps forward. And tonight, I feel a dance coming on. I think we're going to be moving.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jerry Green, Black Student Advocate. Sir, please say hello and welcome back. What you been up to lately, sir?
Thank you. Greetings from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Working on our book, and my book is finalizing it, hoping to have it out the first or the second week of next month. Bullying is a drug, and how we compare the bully and their endorphins, how when they're bullying other people, as to when someone is on drugs, the endorphins, how they are similar, and they get the same high. So excited about tonight, and again, thanks for having me on your platform again.
Absolutely, sir. And Dr. Ericka Johnson, you're your first time guest here, and we welcome you in the spirit of hospitality. We got you on here, but what you got going on lately? What you got going on, man? I know it's a lot.
Well, thank you for having me this evening. Just released my first book, From Sub to Soup, The Journey of a Transformational Leader, where I talk about my experience from being a substitute teacher to ending up being a superintendent, where I had the opportunity to serve more than 20 schools throughout the state, and some key takeaways that I learned, and I'm sharing those in this book to truly inspire and help any leader in any organization to transform. Exciting stuff.
Ooh, it's go. Listen, y'all need to share this with a friend. Hey, even share this with a hater, because we're gonna learn tonight. We're gonna talk about self-awareness, because a lot of times we don't know the position that we're in, and so we need friends to show us our blind spots. Self-awareness is considered the most important part of emotional intelligence. Why? Because it is the foundation upon which the components are met. Which components are we referring to tonight? Tonight we're going to talk about self-regulation. We're going to talk about social skills. We're going to talk about empathy. We're going to talk about motivation and how they are built together to create you, to create your character, to create your disposition. And it's that ability that you need to have to recognize and understand how your emotions work. Those emotions allows you to manage your behavior, your reactions, and to understand their impact they have on other people. And when we do this, we're able to build a more effective collegial reputation and have more effective relationships. And so if we can't understand what's happening inside of us, and if we can't manage what's happening inside of us, then we cannot properly communicate, we can't improve, and we can't grow. So we're going to talk about a heavy conversation tonight. I want to go first to Buddy Thornton, Positive Social Change Agent Pro. And why? Because I want to talk about the generational perspective of this topic tonight. I want to talk about how self-awareness is affecting and will affect and has affected our generations. You live in a multi-generational household, and so you see this all the time. You see this when it comes to self-regulation. You see this when it comes to social skills, empathy, motivation. Every day you see these different layers manifesting right under your roof. How does this affect you and your family, sir? That's the first question I got tonight.
Well, the most important thing is that the expectation curve in a divisive environment has completely flattened. We can do one thing in our household, but as soon as our children or grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, in my case, walk out the front door, we have no way to know who they're going to run into and what opinion is going to be thrown to their head. We have no way to control that, but we can prepare them. The most important thing that we can do is get them to understand that there is nothing and no one who can stop them from thinking for themselves. And we have to role model that. We have to make sure, even though they are younger, 9 years old, 6 years old, it doesn't matter. We need to let them understand that they are not someone else's label. They do not wear someone else's label. They get to determine their own label. And we have to role model that to the nth degree. We have to do that all the time.
Okay, I want to open up the panel because when you said it's so detrimental, you role model, but can they recall? You role model, but can they remember? You role model, but can they apply? You role model, can they go up Bloom's taxonomy all the way to create their own thing and role model it to their peers, to the people that look up to them? The panel's open. How do we get our scholars? How do we get our teachers? How do we get our stakeholders to remember what they were shown, remember what they were modeled, and recall it and apply it and create it again and again and reproduce it? The panel's open. How do we do it?
So for me, I think it's that intrinsic motivation, right? And at the end of the day, what will be the reward for your behavior, right? And so when you have intrinsic motivation, you can internally reflect on these things that you've learned in your past, these things that your parents have instilled upon you, because you know what the reward will be at some point in your life. And I'm sure for everyone on the call here this evening, we're looking to something greater than ourselves at the end of the day, right? And if you internally have accepted those values at your core, then that intrinsic motivation will guide your path as you make these decisions in life. So I think it's about not only teaching our children and our youth, just how to relate in a positive way in the world and to put out positive influences, but also what do you get back from that? So what is the reward at the end of the day from that?
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. Who's next?
I would piggyback on what Dr. Johnson said, and also layer it with what is your brand? Meaning, what is the brand of the family? And when I say that, our parents, with us growing up, saying, you are an extension of me. And don't go out there and make me look bad. And don't have me have to come up to the school, at least my mother, don't have me have to come up to the school. Because if I come up to the school, it's going to be too bad for you. Because my mother had a motto, my kids don't embarrass me, I embarrass my kids. And with that, my mother met the teachers, held them accountable, held me accountable. So it was a three-legged stool: student, administration, staff, and household. And we all had roles. And again, she was like, I taught you right. If you get out and do wrong, I'm going to address it. And I think in today's environment, though, I think the actual staff members have to meet parents where they are and have to do more events and things that's not at the schoolhouse. I think they need to go more into the community, because now when you go and see how students are living, how students and families how they're interacting, then that'll give you a more rounded understanding of these students and the community versus not living in the community. They drive in and jettison out. So now there's no real stakeholders many times with these staff. Because the thing is one of my teachers said, Jerry, I want to make sure I educate y'all because I don't want none of y'all later, because you don't have education, no skill set, coming to break in my house where I worked hard for, where I'm at work teaching. My stuff is being stolen. So I have, something that I want to get out of you, because I want you to be better citizens and take it to the next level. And I'll land my plane there.
Oh,
I think it's very
come on.
important to remember. I think it's very important to remember that we have to look at the world from a completely different position than what has been traditional eyeball. Most people look at the world as the adults are in control, the adults have to do everything, and the kids are just being brought to the point where they can become functional adults. Where we are failing them is we are not teaching them that they are the future. They are the future control. They are the future leaders. They are the future that we will not live in. The kids depend too much on us. Today's children are affirmation addicts. They won't move unless we give them that slight nod, or we give them that look that gives them permission. We need to teach them that at some point the threshold where they actually become who they're supposed to be is when they learn when it is correct for them to stop asking for permission. That doesn't mean they can go crazy, hog wild, but they have to learn to stand on their own 2 feet and then make those mistakes and then be corrected instead of worrying about making those mistakes. There are not enough mistakes being made, so the kids are never learning from failure.
Oh,
Let me ask a question real fast on that.
Go ahead.
And I can see what Dr. Thornton is saying, because it makes me think about how kids are earning or yearning for likes when they post something.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I just want to add to that right there with Dr. Thornton, what he just said.
Let me add this real quick, because what you guys have said is dangerous. And I want to make sure I package this the best of my ability. Because what I heard a lot of things. I heard self-regulation. I heard self-management. I heard self-constraints. But I also heard character. I heard strengthening that character from Dr. Johnson. But I also heard self-will. I heard that strength of mind, that strength of will. But I'm gonna be honest with you, it's tedious. It's tedious. It is tedious to manage your emotions. It is tedious to communicate your emotions, especially in chaotic situations. I'm telling you, it's tedious. I'm telling you, it's tedious to be in a chaotic situation that we have been presented with over these last, I'm gonna say, few months. It's tedious to take that which we have been given and to improve ourselves. Yet, despite its importance, we still have to be self-aware. That self-awareness piece, though, unfortunately, is often misunderstood from the top to the bottom. I can talk about pyramids. I can talk about pyramids here. I can talk about jurisdictions. I can talk about all that stuff. But in a nutshell, it's misunderstanding. And misunderstanding oftentimes leads to neglect. Though we may assume that because we are speaking, we are comprehending. Though it may seem that we are listening and it's active and it's engaged. But is it? Is it engaged, or is it neutral, or is it disengaged? It depends on the level of our understanding and how we learn. I know I am. I'm my worst critic. And so, these are the personal signals that we need to diagnose. I believe Dr. Johnson would call it diagnostic specificity. But truly, effective communication goes beyond talking. It involves listening, it involves understanding, and it involves responding with self-care. taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
What do the young people need to hear? Because they need a word. I'm telling you, they need a word. They need a word that's going to empower. Our young ladies need a word that's going to empower them to take care of themselves, not to splurge on themselves, but there's a difference. What is the difference between splurging on yourself and taking care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit? The panel's open. Who wants to take that?
Well, I wanna stay right there for just a minute because I think you said a lot. You used the word tedious, which was very interesting. Because to that point, I think our youth in particular are receiving so many mixed messages. So it's hard for them to navigate. Think about the young mind and when the brain develops. It's difficult enough for an adult to navigate all the mixed messages that we receive from society. You know, at one time, most outlets were in alignment, whether it was school, family, church, home, everybody was on one accord at some point. And I think that's rare these days. I think there's a lot of mixed messages, and children have a hard time navigating that. And I wonder if that has caused them to be stagnant, if that has caused them to lose that internal approach to critical thinking and thinking on their own, because they don't even really know what to think these days. And so I just wonder if all the noise is making such a huge impact that it's causing our children to be stagnant.
Ooh, that's good. You know what? And when you said that, and it's going to be ugly, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you said that, the word I heard was affliction. I heard the word affliction, and I know with affliction comes also burden and also comes strain. Listen, I was on a crutch a few weeks ago, and I noticed before I got on the crutch, I had to get on the crutch because I pulled my hip joint out of place doing too much. And when I went to the doctor, they said you strained your hip joint. I thought it was dislocated, but sometimes when you strain something, it feels like it's misaligned when it's just under a lot of stress. And so maybe our young people are under, watch this, a lot of stress, whether it's through technology, COVID-19, recovering from that, but it is still tedious, and the stress has caused a strain, which leads to anxiety. And so now we have other things that we're dealing with as it relates to the deformation of the educational system. Now we have strains in the mix. So we got in 2020, buddy, remember this. We talked about how do we educate our kids with technology in the mix. But now in 2025 is how do we educate our children with anxiety in the mix. But the panel's open. The panel's open. The panel's open. Who wants to take that?
Well, let's look at reality. On one hand, you have parents who want to give their children enough room to make mistakes and grow. And as soon as they walk out the front door and let's say they're, preteen, but they're getting there, they're in middle school, and the next door neighbor sees them walking down the street without any adult supervision, and the next thing you know, the police are on the block. Why is a child out without adult supervision? So you have a very, very mixed message across society that for some reason what was perfectly normal 20, 30, 40 years ago is a pariah of behavior in today's world. And you're sending these kids mixed messages. I know what my parents will let me do. I have no clue what my neighbor will let me do. I have no clue what the man across the street will let me do. How do I know what I can actually do? There is no rule. There is no set rule. So how do we make sure that these kids are allowed to make enough mistakes grow because, I have a doctorate in behavior, and there is no faster way to learn than to make a mistake, drop to the ground, stand up, dust yourself off, and look around and go, okay, that didn't work. Now what's next? That is what kids need today. They don't have that today. They're not given permission to fail because whether it happens in the household or not, society as a whole has taken this, let's put a helmet on every kid and let's put a glove on every hand and let's not ever let anything get hurt.
Come on, y'all, bring it. That was brilliant. Who's next?
I'm just going to let that sink in with me for a second.
Let me say this. I have seen Dr. Johnson, Dr. Thornton. I've seen this firsthand that many people in leadership positions will throw a rock and hide their hand. But tonight, y'all have put the finger on it. You put the finger on it. You have shown us, okay, equivocally what the challenge is. But I feel like the reason why certain people, and I'm gonna say stakeholders, they throw rocks and hide their hands, meaning they place the blame on other people besides themselves, is because they don't want to feel, watch this here, incriminated. Incrimination is a powerful drug. Jerry, I just read your book. I mean, a powerful book, Earth Shattering. It has its own taxonomy. Bullying is a drug. But when you wrote that book, you wrote the book. What did you have in mind when you wrote that book? Because it's tied into tonight's topic. What was in your mind when you wrote that book and gave it the title that you gave it? You could have gave it a million titles, but you gave it that title. What was on your mind? Talk about it.
Because just like Dr. Thornton said, the anxiety kids get once they're bullied, and they don't get the latitude. And when I say that to make mistakes, is that we have educators or individuals who've been in education here on this line. A lot of things should be ed code violations, things that stay right at the schoolhouse. Okay, Jerry, you got into a fight. Okay, you're going to get 2 days suspension. Other kid gets 3 days, or whoever's the aggressor get more time. That's enough. But they call in law enforcement. So now that's how you pipelining these students, because where it could be an ed code violation, they make it a penal code violation. And once law enforcement gets involved, it's not going to cross back over to being an ed code. The law enforcement is going to get involved. So again, I saw it to whereas individuals being other students or staff, because a third of calls we get is staff bullying students, the high they get. But just like eggs, once a student is cracked or that shell is broken, it never comes back to the original form. And now we understand and we know that shattered students become broken adults. And we're still having to manage and try to help people become whole as adults when they didn't get the attention when that issue happened to therapy, through support, or whatever the other mechanism they might need it to get through that trauma that they're experiencing. That's the other thing is we have to call this when a kid is being bullied trauma. And once that happens, again, it changes their whole life trajectory, because if bullying is a drug, we break down the 515 letters of being breaks confidence. Now that student don't have the confidence to compete, to go after certain careers, because it's just not in them anymore. They have been beat down and broken. And so that's where I came from with the book, with the work we do and how we stand in the gap for parents and employees dealing with their student or dealing with their employee within a K through 12 school district.
Oh my God! And buddy, I'm coming down your lane because I know you wrote a series of books. You ain't just write one. You wrote a series, Slippery Slope. But let me go to Jerry real quick. That what you just said to me, that is like a diagnose. It is you diagnosticate the situation that we're having in our black and brown communities, where they have been going through trauma for the last half century, but they do not go and get help, right? They don't go and get therapy. But my Caucasian brothers and sisters know how. They are equipped to go to get that multi-tiered support, whether it's behavioral, whether it's academic, but they go and they get help, and it's not frowned upon like it is in our black and brown communities. My question is, and it's going to be ugly, simply why?
Because in our community, we can accept a broken bone, but we don't want to look like we're broken or we're weak in the mind. So in our community, if you're an athlete, you can play hurt, but you can't play injured. Every major sport has an injury reserve. So, but many times, because our students are injured and they continue to try to go, now they're limping or they're not whole trying to get through a process. And we don't have the latitude to make the mistakes like Buddy was saying. Whereas we see other students might get 3 or 4 chances, but our students don't.
Hmm.
And that's the other side of that coin.
And I think you have a lot of educators. I thought it was interesting that it was mentioned a high percentage of the bullies are staff members. And so you have these adults who were once children who are still carrying that trauma, and now they're impacting and hurting more kids because hurt people, right? And
Right.
with that, with the therapy piece, I firmly believe, when you know better, you do better. We're just now talking about therapy in the black and brown community. It was taboo for so long. To your point, it was shameful. It was, I don't need that kind of help. But now we're starting to have these conversations. And I think, again, when you know better, you do better. And that's why it's so important to have these kinds of talks, because we need to talk about it. We need to talk about this trauma that's impacting our communities. I once heard it said that being black is traumatic itself, right? And all of the stigma that comes with that. Those kids are getting sent to alternative certification schools at a higher frequency than their non-black or non-person of color counterparts. And that's the reality, and we need to talk about that. And until we can start having those meaningful conversations, we can't expect a lot of change in our community. But when you know better, you do better. So let's talk about it.
Just
Well,
today,
I want to
I was
add one
talking.
thing.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Thornton.
Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't want to cut you off, but the most important thing that people need to realize is that it is a soft psychological victimology position. It doesn't matter what minority group you're in. The blacks are an extremely vivid example because they have been that for decades. I've always lived in a diverse neighborhood. I have never lived in an all white neighborhood. I wouldn't even know what all white looks like because my parents didn't believe that we should grow up in a biased environment. They didn't believe that we should carry that as part of our soul. But the problem will never go away until there is a midline. There is an advocacy position where people who understand what it means to be in a diverse environment can soften the path. You know, when you walk in and you want to see a doctor, it is very difficult for you to open up when that doctor doesn't look like the mirror. If if you don't see yourself in that doctor's face, you do have a small amount of hesitation. Yeah, the more education we get, the more we understand doctors are doctors, and that doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter what they look like. But let's talk about the majority of the population. 60 to 70% of the population in research, even today, still will not open up to people who are not from their core silo or does not look like them. And that is a problem that is never going to go away. While we were doing research this very year, we had an 85% return rate if we made sure that the response paper was completely bland. There was no way to identify a demographic. But as soon as we opened up any type of demographic into the question and answer area, we only got a 5% return rate. And that can only be explained by the silo mentality of how today's world looks. And I do agree with Dr. Johnson. We have to break down those silos, and we have to get deeper into the less educated people and get them to understand that doing what they've done for decades is only going to keep harming them more and more. And once you pile of logs up on their shoulder, man, it's hard to walk down the block. It is hard.
Dr. Thornton, what you said to me was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking because there's so many people, not just black and brown, but people in general, that have suffered. I used that word earlier, strain. They have been straining to make it. They have been in agony. They have been disjointed. They have been in misery. There's been so much disturbance. I'm talking domestic violence, you name it, but it's agony. Going through those ordeals. And it's a type of tribulation, I believe. Tribulation, thinking everyone is against you and everyone is your adversity. And so now you're going through this hardship, you're having nightmares, you are looking confused, you're at the point of collapse, and people look at you like you're deranged. But I have never seen that from you. From day one, you and your family to me have been so harmonious. So I was shocked. I was really shocked when you asked me to read your book series, Slippery Slope. It shocked me. I never told you this before, but I was like, Slippery Slope? Slippery, because to me, when I read the title, and I could be off, slippery slope, that's people that fall down. They fall down, but in your book, you show people how to get up. Let me ask you something, because I feel like I'm all about experience. I know I'm military. I know Jerry is military, and we're experience-driven people. But buddy, I have to ask you, and we want to know as the audience. We want to know. We want to pull you in. We want you to come forth and let us know what is the one emotion you want to become more aware of yourself, in yourself, about yourself, and why. That's my first question.
I have struggled with this. I have absolutely struggled with this for most of my life, Isaiah, and you know I'm in my 70s. I really, really struggle when someone comes at me or comes toward me or makes a very blatant statement that I feel is absolutely incorrect. I have tended throughout my entire life, I have tended to overreact or be defensive until I got into my 60s and I got my doctorate and I realized I was being a fool. I was being the fool. I don't know somebody's backstory. I don't know somebody's origin story. I don't know their heritage. I don't know if they got up this morning and found out that their brother died. I don't know if one of their kids is struggling in school. I don't know anything about them. If there's one emotion that I wish I could really, really grab a hold of and I could just say I am so glad I have it, it would be the infinite patience to hold my tongue until I get the whole story. And that's the reason I write The Slippery Slope. That's the reason I write the other books I write, because I have to struggle every day of every day to try to find a way to have that patience and to not overreact, because that makes me just like the people that I despise the most.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Who? I want to open up the panel. Golly, and this is an opportunity. This is the opportunity to release. To release. Who wants to take that same question next? What is the one emotion you want to become more aware of in yourself, and why?
So
I
for
would say,
me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Dr. Johnson. No, go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
So for me, I think I've always, there's a quote about how you make a person feel, right? And I always wonder, because I know at times, especially in the positions that I've had in education, being a principal, even, being a teacher, and then later a superintendent, I know that I've had some harsh conversations with some people. I know that the way that I have responded sometimes have to be based on accountability rather than fully empathetic. And I often wonder how I really impact another person, how I really make them feel. You can ask all day. And in my consulting work, I see this often. A leader can ask their staff a certain question and they'll give them the answer that they want them to have. But I can come back and ask the same question. And because I have, no dog in the fight, they're going to be completely open and honest with me. And so I often wonder, even after I've asked a person, how I've made them feel, whether it's a positive or negative response, I often wonder, when people leave my presence, how did I truly impact them? How did I really make them feel? And I'm not sure that I can ever truly get the answer to that question. But that's the one thing that I really wonder, and it piques my interest often. How did I make them feel?
That's important. That's so important. That's so important. Who's next? Who's next?
I would say with me, patience or more patience. Um, Before, when I was young, especially in the military, when you young and you got a sharp tongue, you're a smart ass. But when you older, you're witty.
See, now I gotta make the podcast explicit. See, because every time I post a podcast, they're like, "Is the content? Come on now, see what you did."
Okay.
But go ahead,
Okay. Okay.
flow.
Yeah. So okay. All right. I'll correct that. So when you're young, you can have a sharp tongue, but you're too young. But you're young, so when you say things, then it's not. Again, they feel you don't have enough wisdom behind you to say certain things. But then when you older, you could say something, and now they're like, "Oh, now you got wisdom because youth and wisdom don't go together." And now because you're older, you got more weight. You like you've been around, you're seasoned. It carries a different level, you know. And I can remember again saying something now that I said, 30 years ago, but it didn't land because I was younger. And now I just sit back and listen, especially when I'm in meetings with school districts or parents, and listen and let them get their full, or try to let them get their full speech out, and then digest it and then respond versus listening just to respond. Um,
Thank you.
and today I had a conversation. I was going to say this a little earlier. I had a conversation with a retired superintendent, and she said, "Jerry, I was talking to someone, and the student, she was getting in fights so often. Mom was getting tickets because the student was fighting so much from the SRO that they had to pull the student out of that school because the mom can't afford the tickets anymore." And I was like,
That's crazy.
"Where's the support for the student? Where's the support for the student? If she's fighting that much, something is going on, you know." And I said, "Well, she said, Jerry, I know." And the superintendent said, "Jerry, I told my staff that when I deal with Jerry, he's square with me. He's straight up with me." She said, "But let's not give him a reason to call me." you know, so I'll say patience.
Oh, that's good. That's good. What I heard from and you talking about school suspension. Oh, that's a whole nother other topic that we need to talk about, but not tonight. But what I heard from the panelists were really two words in a nutshell. Was responsibility was one, and then duty was two. But again, I got to come up with that word again. Tedious. It's tedious because oftentimes in the world that we live in, responsibility and duty will lead you to isolation. It will lead you to solitude. It will lead you to segregation. It will lead you to loneliness, separation, installation. Installation is a good thing when your separation is leading you to peace. But if your separation and isolation is leading you to deformation, then it's leading you to destruction. My question is, how do we, no, you know what? I'll tell you what, I'm going to do this because we run out of time. Dr. Johnson, I'm going to go to you. What type of training is lacking for our teachers, students, and parents when it comes to providing effective awareness so that teachers don't feel isolated? Teachers don't feel like they're in solitude. Grade levels, like, ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, those department chairs, they don't feel like they're segregated from the other grade levels. And they don't feel like they have been withdrawn from what's going on in the on that campus. And so, like, what are some PDs, professional development, what are some ways that we can cultivate what's going on in our learning communities to help our students succeed? Because at the end of the day, No child should be left behind. So, what are some ways that we can cultivate and provide those effective self awareness strategies for our teachers who's modeling before our students to help them grow and help them learn? That's the question I got for you.
So I think that that truly is the gap in our schools today. I think at some point we attempt to support students in that way, even if it's at a minimal level. However, we often neglect our teachers and our parents. And so I think we need a three-pronged approach. I think, we talk about SEL, even though it seems to be a bad word in the in the South right now, but that social emotional learning where we support our students. I think our teachers need the same thing, along with our parents. So I, I always we would have something in school called happy hour for our teachers, and it would just be at the start of a professional development, a staff meeting, etc. We would have an opportunity to just share some positive insights, have each teacher praise one another, their colleagues, caught being good episodes, that kind of thing for the adults in the room. Also, for our parents, celebrating our parents who are showing that they're engaged and involved. And we have to accept the fact that, our parents deal with a lot as well. And so, although they may not show up for all events, that doesn't mean that they don't support their students. And so we have to come up with some mechanisms to celebrate our parents. When we're giving awards to kids, let's give some awards to parents. Let's give awards to teachers. I think we have to spread it around and make sure that we're hitting everybody and then bringing the community together, to have celebrations together, to have conversations, to break bread together. I think that's the game changer, and that's how we can support our parents, our students, and our teachers.
I heard so many hidden powers and what you shared with us tonight. And what can be said after that? The panel is open. We're about to close this thing out. What are your remarks? What are your comments? What are your thoughts after what you just heard? Because that was so powerful.
I agree. That's it.
Uh, I do agree to a point, and I want to clarify that. It is one thing to try to bring everybody together as a community. It's another thing to understand the the way the reward system works with extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and, and the top 10% are always going to walk past the awards because they're going to be so far ahead. And the bottom 30% are going to believe that the awards are tainted because they didn't earn them. These kids are not stupid. The parents are not, maybe be disconnected, but they're not completely out of the loop when their kids come home and they're struggling and they don't bring home good grades, and yet they still get treated as if they have quote unquote earned something. Then that digresses the school system. It does not allow the school to say we are a quality school. It says we are going to measure everybody and just say they're all equal, which is not the way life really works. We have to let the top 10% run with the wind. They're going to anyway. We have to help the 60% who are in the middle do a good job and get wherever they're going to go. But we have to let God put his hand on our heart, and we need to work with the bottom 30% and eliminate the reason why they are anchored in victimology, the reason they're anchored in anger, the reason they end up being on the wrong side of the law when they become adults or even teens. We treat everybody as if they're equal, and they are equal at the starting line, but as soon as they leave the starting line, we have to know which ones we have to help. We have to know which ones we have to just let run. And that would be the only difference I would say. I want everyone to believe they're part of community. I want the ones who are struggling to understand that they are going to be helped until they can stand on their own 2 feet. But I don't believe they should be given a participation trophy because that they are smart enough to know they didn't earn it. So why should they be getting it? And then that cheapens anything that happens to them the rest of their life. It's a psychological fallacy.
What you just said was absolutely furious. It was dynamic in nature. There were so many frequencies. There were so many frequency bands. And you are a disruptor. We need to change your name from Buddy Thornton, Positive Social Change Agent Pro to Buddy Thornton Disruptor, because you just disrupted the whole podcast. And it was a good disruption. Let me go to Jerry Green real quick. Jerry Green, Black Student Advocate. I want to talk about emotional intelligence now, because I want to end this, but now Dr. Thornton did that, and we can't. I want to talk about emotional intelligence. I want to talk about why is it not being measured effectively overall, and I want to talk about what are some ways that you have seen, that you have experienced, that can better cultivate emotional intelligence for all our stakeholders that Dr. Johnson was just talking about. What are some ways we can cultivate emotional intelligence with our stakeholders in our schools, in our environments, in our communities? Talk about it, sir.
Again, I always go to place based, meaning moving away from the schoolhouse. If it has to be at a community center, or if an event has to be at a church that's still, engulfed in the community. Because I just see anytime everything has to happen at the schoolhouse, then parents are scared of the schoolhouse because they might have been traumatized there themselves. So they going in with some trauma themselves. I think, in my experience, is when individuals come and they have the same goal of saying, I'm here to make sure it's the best experience for my student, and I'm going to help take away the discipline problem we have here at the schoolhouse. When I advocate for a family, I tell the parents, now you have to be on site minimum 12 times a year. By doing that, your student and his friends, her friends, should correct their behavior. And by doing that, that's going to make it a safer environment in which all students can get an education. So I think it starts with everybody being on the same accord of understanding we're there for the student. But it's so many games that's played with adults within the school system that affects the student. And again, you come out of a meeting with a parent that's upset, and now you got to go back to the class and you got to get your head together. That's hard. It's hard for anyone to code switch. So I think if we all just get back to the basics, if we ever can, that we're there for the best interest of the student. And I was telling the superintendent today, if there's no problems and the student is in a safe environment that's conducive to getting education, you won't hear from me. But if someone is hurting a baby and a parent calls me, then I'm coming hard because that baby needs to be protected. So we just always have to keep the main thing, and that's the student. And I think that's the baseline to build for our emotional intelligence, is then everyone knows I will not say this to you, teacher, aggressively because it's going to hurt my student. I'm not going to do this to your student, ma'am, because it's going to hurt your student. And when we all come to the table with that, we'll be in a better environment for everyone.
You know what you said was untapped. It was untapped. I'm gonna say this. It was untapped potential, because that's something that we have to grow to something that we have to grow to. Listen, the podcast, listen, this conversation, as we're wrapping this up, we are overtime. We're overtime. What are your takeaways for tonight? Who would like to go first? Oh my goodness, I can't even process this right now because it's rich. It's rich. It's rich. Who wants to go first? Takeaways for tonight.
Anytime I come on your podcast, I learn more. I'm just glad to be among the other two panelists, and
Bless
again,
you. Bless
just
you. Bless
open
you,
my
sir.
eyes to more, to the work we have to do, and just keeping the student center.
Bless
So
you.
again, I thank the other two panelists for their input and for educating me tonight. Thank you.
I really
I
think
too.
we really need to understand one thing, and that is that the passion that people who are in this sphere have to not look at whether we are in, we don't have to have consensus. We don't have to agree. We don't even have to be on the same road, but we do have to share the same elevated passion that we want to care for the people who are in our grasp. We want to be an influence. We want to be positive, and we want to learn by being contentious. You're right. Tonight I wanted to be a little bit of a disruptor. You're right. But it was because I believe every time I get on with Jerry Green, I feel his passion. For 3-4 days after I get off the podcast, I walk around going, oh no, I'm not going to put up with that. No, I feel the passion of do not mistreat my children. That's what I feel. And sometimes you just have to wear that on your sleeve because too many people don't do that. Too many teachers don't do that. So, is it okay to have passion? Absolutely. That was the whole purpose of it.
Oh, that's good. Well, take us home, Dr. Johnson. Take us home, and thank you for being here.
I too would like to say thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to be in the presence of greatness with Mr. Green
Bless
and
you.
Dr. Thornton. This has truly been a treat for me. And I keep hearing this same word, passion, and it just reminds me of my very first principal. She would always say, you can give without loving, but you can't love without giving.
Impact of education.